Okay, on to the next Skip the Line reaction, man. And this one is Aesop Rock Gopher Guts, man. This is a Skip the Line reaction by Campbell Cravens. He requested 5. There's still another one coming after this. But a lot of people have actually been requesting Gopher Guts in the comment section as well. So this seems to be quite popular. Right, I've told you 1,000 times before, I absolutely adore the way this man writes. I think it's so thought-provoking. Let's see what this one's got in store. As you know, like we did with the others, we're going to give it a quick listen uninterrupted first, just so I can try and get my thoughts in some sort of order, and then we'll go line for line and try and break down the lyrics. Let's rock and roll, man. Aesop Rock, Gopher Guts. Let's go.
Grimy gopher guts, poolside, open one, I don't forget spoons twice. Lukewarm Folgers, mold on his moon pie. Rooms in his home that dissipate in the fruit flies. Suicide lane, wide load ride, looting in the wake of an amicable marooning. My duty go for moving in packs to sharing food with a cat. Tomates me, I accidentally saw the woman in half. She said, I'll keep you in my prayers. I said, I need to hide a body. She said, okay honey, talk to you on Friday. Apparently we share a common plasma, so the growing disconnection doesn't matter. According to the blood and water chapter. Weird. Who wrote the blood and water chapter anyway? Probably sincerely dad. Only child, 30 cats. Looking for a way to reconnect with an averted past. Except it doesn't always work like that. Today I pulled 3 baby snakes out of moss and dirt. With a wild strawberry bombs toss and turn. I told them you were gonna be something inventive and electric. You were healthy, you were special, you were present. Then I let them go. You were sitting at the gate awaiting spirits and provisions. I was privy to a headache over pirouetting innards. In a mirror sweating pictures. Who's there, simian or lizard? Is it worth or is it disappearing difference in ambition and material? Antiquated gentlemen, outlaws reduced to a Ferris wheel of vitriol. Move as a godless heathen, black gums, tooth gone. Bootleg Yukon, Cornelius, I'm a... That's better, here we go. Disenchanted face printed on a $0 bill. Got a little plot of land where authority isn't recognized. Contraband keeping the core beside checker lies. Check. Never mind a misanthrope vying for affection to the wretched sound of mysticism. Dying, it is something he must handle on his own. The wind blown way when a wind don't play. Today I pulled 3 green frogs that are leaf and bark. Where the grapevines climb a convenient barn. I told them you were gonna be something tenacious and exalted. You are mighty, you are gracious, you are lauded. Then I let him go. Oh. I have been completely unable to maintain any semblance of relationship on any level. I have been a bastard to the people who have actively attempted to deliver me from peril. I have been acutely undeserving of the ear that listen up and lip that kiss me on the temple. I have been accustomed to a stubborn disposition that admits it wish its history disassembled. I have been a hypocrite in sermonizing tolerance while skimming for a ministry to pretzel. I have been unfairly resentful of those I wish had acted different when the bidding was essential. I have been a terrible communicator, prone to isolation over sympathy for devils. I have been my own worst enemy since the very genesis of rebels. Today I pulled 3 ghost crabs out of rock and sand with a low tide showcase of promised land. I told them you were gonna be something dynamic and impressive. You are patient, you are gallant, you are festive. Then I let them go. Oh.
Whew, okay. Yeah, we definitely leveling up over here. What the fuck? Jesus. All right. Good Lord. Good Lord. I got a semblance of an idea of what this is about, but fuck. Okay, this is the most complex we've gone. It's the most complex we've gone. Okay. Let's give this a shot. Let's go.
Grimy gopher guts, poolside, open one, I don't forget spoons twice. Lukewarm vultures, mold on his moon pie. Rooms in his home that dissipate in the fruit fly.
Okay, so greasy, grimy gopher guts, poolside. 041, I don't forget spoons twice. Lukewarm folgers, mold on his moon pie. So he's kind of describing his environment, right? But greasy, grimy gopher guts, I'm not entirely sure. I think the way he's actually trying to paint the picture over here is obviously like, you know, when you kind of feel like, you know, you got a bit of a twisted stomach, right? So greasy, grimy gopher guts, but also kind of possibly describing noodles or poolside, and then also playing into noodles. Greasy, grimy, so guts and noodles, the way noodles are all twisted up. It's kind of like how his stomach feels. It's like his stomach is feeling all twisted up. It could apply to both things, greasy, grimy noodles and greasy, grimy gopher guts, because of the noodles that he ate, right? 041, don't forget spoons twice, obviously, because if he leaves a spoon outside, it gets all moldy and things like that, and he's like, I probably shouldn't do that again, so he doesn't leave spoons twice. I'm not entirely sure if that makes any sense. Lukewarm folgers, don't even know what folgers is. Mold on his moon pie. Okay, so this is obviously he's let stuff outside to rot, right? Which kind of already is playing into a characteristic aspect of not giving a fuck, right? Rooms in his home that dissipate into fruit flies. Again, a characteristic of just not giving a fuck. Like, it's just not caring about his environment, not caring about cleaning up and things like that, right? Because of the space that he's possibly in. Okay.
In his home that dissipate in the fruit flies. Suicide lane, wide load ride, looting in the wake of an amicable marooning. My duty go for moving in packs to sharing food with a cat. To mock me, I accidentally saw the woman in half.
So this over here where, okay, so firstly he was painting the actual picture of his environment, right? Which already kind of shows you his disposition. It shows you his sort of like state of mind that he's currently in. Suicide lane, wide loading, ride, looting. Very interesting way to actually write that line, because if you think suicide lane, so there's a specific lane for wide load vehicles that carry a hell of a lot of something, right? In this case, I'm probably assuming if you're going suicide lane, it's because he's carrying a lot of baggage, right? He's carrying a lot of shit in his life, and he's in a specific lane, which is the suicide lane. Suicide lane, wide load, ride, looting. From the looting perspective, and it's like, you know, once those sort of things like topple over, then people sort of loot that, so they kind of take advantage of your weaknesses, right? And what you're carrying. I'm not entirely sure, but that's where I'm going with that. In the wake of an amicable marooning. So suicide lane, wide load, rooting, so a lot of baggage that he's carrying, and that's in the wake of an amicable marooning. Marooning means it's kind of abandonment, right? So it's kind of like abandoning it, but it's abandoning somebody possibly in like an isolated area where he's actually got no support at all, right? Where you'd be marooning in a desert, essentially. So it's like actually being left alone, abandoned and left alone by himself in an area. It's kind of what I think he's thing, but also amicable in the sense of like he's saying is like he wasn't just left there. It was like it was an amicable thing. So it was an amicable abandonment. It was like, yeah, it's cool. I'm not entirely sure if he's referring to his actual parents, but he refers to Ma over here. So it's like it was an amicable sort of like split in the sense of like, okay, cool, I go my way, you go your way, and I'm going to be left isolated, abandoned, right? So he's kind of taking responsibility for that. He's not putting all of that responsibility on his parents, I think. I think he's kind of taking responsibility for that as well. My duty from moving in packs to sharing food with the cat are obviously, forced to sort of interact with human beings. My duty going from moving in packs, right? So he could be talking about his friends and things like that, to then going and being isolated again, sharing food with a cat, which is probably Kirby, right? Then to Ma, it's me, I accidentally sawed a woman in half.
She said, I'll keep you in my prayers. I said, I need to hide a body. She said, okay, honey, talk to you on Friday. Apparently we share a common plasma, so the growing disconnection doesn't matter. According to the blood and water chapter.
I love the way he actually wrote that, because he says, okay, so I told Ma I'm accidentally sawed a woman in half. She said, I'll keep you in my prayers. I said, I need to hide a body. So I think he's going from being a magician and trying to get her validation. So what would a magician do to try and get validation from their crowd? It's like they would try to saw, it's a magic trick, try to saw a woman in half. So he's trying to say, I'm trying to show you my successes, right? But my success, which I said was going to be a success, actually turned up to be a failure, right? So I accidentally sawed a woman in half. So I tried to show you my magic, but it accidentally failed, right? So, and then he goes to his mom, and he kind of like in this vulnerable state, and is like, okay, I need your help because I failed, right? In the sense of like, I need to hide a body. So that entire sort of metaphor is so damn fucking clever, because it's almost like saying like, you know, kids want their validation from their parents, essentially, and they want to show them their successes, and they want their successes. They want to show them that they do have magic in their life, and they can actually perform magic, right? But it's like, while I was trying to perform magic, I actually blundered the whole thing, and I sawed a woman in half. He didn't literally saw a woman in half, right? But he failed, and then he tried to say, "Listen, I failed trying to do this, and I need a harder body." So, which kind of says, I need you to help me. Right? And she was disconnected in the sense of like, she didn't care. Your failure is your failure. Don't make your problem my problem. So she said, okay, honey, I'll talk to you on Friday. It was off, like completely ignoring his sort of pain and tribulation in that, right? Apparently we share common plasma, which is again what he actually refers to it here in blood and water. We share common plasma, which means blood, so that the growing disconnection doesn't matter. So it doesn't actually matter but the way he says, according to the blood and water chapter. So even if you are disconnected, and even if you don't talk for a while, you know, blood is thicker than water, blood is blood. So even if you don't talk to each other, you're still connected by blood, right? So that doesn't really matter. You know, there's always a way back because you're connected by blood, unlike with friends and society at large. According to the blood and water chapter, which I think is fucking awesome way to write that.
Weird. Who wrote the blood and water chapter anyway? Probably sincerely dad. Only child, 30 cats, looking for a way to reconnect with an averted past, except it doesn't always work like that.
See, over here, weird, who wrote the blood and water chapter anyway? So I was obviously reflecting on that. Who wrote the whole fucking blood is thicker than water chapter anyway? Probably some surly dad, only child, 30 cats, right? Somebody who doesn't actually... So actually he's basically saying the person who said, who wrote that blood and water chapter, he himself was isolated, right? With 30 cats, right? So it's almost like he was sort of fantasizing on the fact that, you know, blood is blood, and you can never disconnect from that, although he himself was disconnected. Only child, 30 cats. Now, over here, it kind of he gives you a little glimpse into what his life might possibly be, because he started with cat 1. So he's probably alluding to the fact that I could possibly be this person myself. That will just land up with 30 cats and no connection to anybody I love, right? Looking for a way to reconnect. Now, this is very cool because it ties into that, because obviously people struggle with their past, and people try to turn away from their past and not deal with their past. So looking for a way to reconnect with an averted past, right? From a past that I turned away from, right? Because it was too painful, except it doesn't always work like that. Your past is your past, and if you don't deal with it and you make that your hitching post, it will never go away. You need to use your past, right? The reason we actually have a memory is that we can remember our past to attain lessons, so that we can structure our future, essentially. So that's where he says, except it doesn't always work like that. You can't just let your past go. You can't turn your back on your past, because it is your past after all.
30 cats, looking for a way to reconnect with an averted past, except it doesn't always work like that. Today I pulled 3 baby snakes out of moss and dirt, with a wild strawberry bombs toss and turn. I told them you were going to be something inventive and electric. You were healthy, you were special, you were present. Then I let them go.
Now, this is pretty sick, man. I fucking love the way this man writes. I think it's so cool, man. It just gets your head spinning. Anyway, Today I pulled 3 baby snakes out of moss and dirt. So again, referring to his actual space. So obviously referring to his garden or something like that, where I pulled 3 baby snakes out of moss and dirt, right? I think there's a sort of deeper meaning into the actual snakes itself, right? Where he could be referring to himself as possibly a snake as well, right? Or that's what he's become, right? But where the wild strawberry vines toss and turn, where I kind of feel like he's also referring to turmoil, right? These snakes were in these strawberry vines where there was some sweetness there, right? Where's the strawberry, but the vines toss and turn where there's a lot of turmoil anyway. You've got to sort of navigate those vines to get to any sort of semblance of sweetness, right? Which kind of refers possibly to his life. I'm not entirely sure. I told him you will grow to be something inventive and electric. This now playing back into his sort of parents and playing back into his past, where it's like he was given all of these sort of like nice compliments by his parents, and it's like, you're going to be something inventive, you're going to be something electric, and then they let go of all of that, right? They kind of like lost all affection for him, and I wouldn't say lost all affection for him, but lost all trust in the fact that he would actually attain or become something, right? So he says, you are healthy. So he's basically trying to be the parent to these 3 snakes to try and sort of see how he would fare, as opposed to sort of like juxtapositioning him to his parents, essentially. And then over here, he kind of tells you, but I did the same or would do the same that my parents would do, right? Because I didn't really like these snakes after a certain amount of time. I didn't particularly like these snakes, and then I let them go. You are healthy. So he affirmed them. He gave them all the adulation that he thought they wanted, took them out of that entanglement, right? But then literally got nothing from them, and then gave them all of the adulation and the assertiveness that they needed. You are healthy, you are special, you are present, but then I let him go, right? Much like my parents did to me, right? So they gave me the validation, they gave me something I needed for my life, and then afterwards they let me go because I just kept being this failure, and then they just like, you always talk, but they no longer trust that he'll be anything. So that's a really, really telling verse over there, because that basically talks of his childhood and how his childhood plays a massive role on who he is today and what he would possibly be if he himself had children, I think. But anyway, let's carry on.
Something inventive and electric. You are healthy, you are special, you are present. Then I let him go. You were sitting at the gate awaiting spirits and provisions. I was privy to a headache over pirouetting innards in a mirror, sweating pictures. Who's there, simian or lizard? As it were, there is a disappearing difference.
See, this the way he writes things over here, I'm not entirely sure who he's referring to here. You were sitting in the gate awaiting spirits and provisions, right? So obviously it was, he's referring to some sort of family member that was sort of sitting at the gate waiting for spirits, kind of on their deathbed. I was privy to a headache over pirouetting innards. It's fucking crazy. So I was privy to a headache over pirouetting innards. So his innards, basically his guts, dancing around because of his nervousness and anxiety. In the mirror, sweating pictures are obviously a very difficult time for him. Who's there, simian or lizard? So he's basically saying, who is there? Simian in terms of monkeys, which kind of refers to the evolution of man, essentially. Like, am I something greater or am I just a lizard? Am I cold-blooded? Am I cold-blooded or am I warm-blooded? Very, very nice way to say that, to actually kind of say, do I have feeling? Do I have emotion? Am I warm-blooded or am I just a lizard? Am I this cold to not care? Although he alludes to the fact that he does care, because I was privy to a headache over pirouetting in it, so he was nervous. He did feel that there was nervousness in the mirror, sweating pictures. But now he also might be there saying, okay, but is this feeling that I'm having of these hardships, is it because it's kind of like dawning on me that I have no heart, that I'm actually a lizard? Or is it because I really feel for this person enough during these harsh times? So he's kind of introspecting on himself, on whether he is a warm with emotion or just cold with sort of disconnection. He's not entirely sure. What is this feeling? He's trying to make sense of that feeling of his intestines. It's like, maybe they'll see through me. Maybe the mask is slipping. I'm not entirely sure. Or maybe it absolutely terrifies him to acknowledge that he's actually human and has a heart. I don't know. Anyway, as it were, there is a difference between there is a disappearing difference.
An ambition and material, antiquated gentlemen, outlaws reduced to a Ferris wheel of vitriol. Move as a godless heathen, black gums, tooth gone, bootleg Yukon, Cornelius.
You see now, so there's a dissipating difference in ambition and material. 100%. Ambition is trying to attain, having the drive to go and attain something, and material. So, and also those two, sadly enough, come hand in hand. You know, the ambition to acquire and attain material things, right? But they're two very different things. You know, your ambition can drive you to be a great man. Your ambition can drive you to save the world and do good for people. And it can also drive you to seek nothing but materialism, which then takes you back to being that lizard, that cold-blooded. And usually when you try and attain hyper success, you need to let go of emotion, which then kind of turns you into a lizard. You lose your simian self to become that lizard. Antiquated gentlemen outlaws reduced to Ferris wheels of vitriol. So sort of like antiquated, which is kind of outdated, gentleman, outlawed, reduced to a Ferris wheel of vitriol. Vitriol is criticism, right? I'm not entirely sure who he's talking about with regards to these antiquated gentlemen, outlawed, reduced to Ferris. I'm not sure if he's talking about himself, right? It's these people with absolutely no hearts, outlaws, antiquated, sort of anachronistic in sense, reduced to a Ferris wheel, so a consistent, infinite loop of criticism, but nothing really of substance. Move as a godless heathen, right? So maybe possibly referring to atheistic tendencies there. So atheism, not believing in a spiritual being. Black Gums, Tooth Gone, bootleg Yukon Cornelius. I'm not entirely sure who Yukon Cornelius is.
That's better. Here we go. Disenchanted face printed on a $0 bill. Got a little plot of land where authority isn't recognized. Contraband keeping the core beside check-a-lot.
I think this is absolutely brilliant. So okay, here we go. So kind of like he's kind of like getting to the crux of this over here. So disenchanted face printed on a $0 bill, which is fire, absolutely fire, because a $0 bill doesn't exist. So disenchanted meaning not happy with himself, printed on money that he actually just doesn't have. So he's disenchanted because of the fact that he has got no money. So this $0 bill doesn't exist because his money doesn't exist, right? Therefore, he's disenchanted of himself. But if you actually think of, disenchanted face printed on a $0 bill, if you actually think of dollar bills itself, it's actually got all of the forefathers' faces on the actual dollar bills itself, right? But that money does actually exist. So it's almost like saying, these were successful people. They were on the money looking back at you, but I have got a disenchanted face on my $0 bill because that's how he feels, because he doesn't have that $0 bill. That $0 bill doesn't exist, meaning he has no money. But I got a plot of land where authority isn't recognized. I love that, where he kind of talks about isolation and isolating himself. Right? So there's authority and there's rules and laws outside of this, but inside this space where there should actually be laws and standards for myself, there are none. And that is why, because I'm not following by any laws and because I'm not following by any standards, my whole life is in turmoil. Right? Contraband keeping the core of his hide Jekyllized. Like, this is fucking brilliant writing. Brilliant writing. Contraband talking about drugs, essentially. Keeping the core, so that's the only thing sort of keeping him in check. But the way he phrases his hide, Jekyllized. Hyde was actually the good. Hyde was actually the criminal in that story, if I'm not mistaken. Jekyll and Hyde. I think it was Dr. Jekyll. Dr. Jekyll, I think, was the investigator who was investigating the criminal, which was Hyde. So what he's trying to say over here is the drugs is keeping his bad side somewhat good. So contraband keeping the core of his hide, so keeping the core of my bad side Jekyllized, somewhat in check, so somewhat controlled, right? So he's playing both parts. I can be good and I can be bad. But right now, the Jekyllized is somewhat keeping my bad side, which is a little bit more prominent, in check for now, essentially.
Never mind a misanthrope vying for affection to the wretched sound of mysticism dying. It is something he must handle on his own. The wind blown away when a wind don't play.
Also, okay, so he does actually say check over there. Never mind a misanthrope vying. I think misanthrope, if I'm not mistaken, is I think it's someone that doesn't like other people or doesn't like crowds or something like that. I think it's someone who doesn't like people. Never mind a misanthrope. So never mind someone who doesn't actually like people and likes to be alone anyway. For affection to the wretched sound of mysticism dying. Okay, so how crazy is that? So over here, he plays into his vulnerability again, and he plays a bit into his hypocrisy, where it's like, I don't really like it. That line makes sense now. I don't really like people, but I'm still vying for the affection of the wretched sound of mysticism dying, right? Because I kind of feel like I live in this mystic world, but I feel like even that's dissipating. And when that's dissipating, I need an encouraging word from even the people from my own enemies, from the people I don't like, right? I don't like people. But when all this mysticism, when I'm sitting there in the mist, when the waters are muddied, right, which is kind of my habitat, and that's where I feel comfortable, but now it kind of feels like it's getting a bit clearer, right? And that's terrifying me, and therefore I need to go and seek some sort of validation and adulation from the very people I disdain. You know what I mean? That's insane. It is something he must handle on his own. So it's something obviously he needs to handle with that on his, that's his own burden, the own monkeys on his back that he needs to deal with. The wind blown away, right? So it's actually blown away. You want to win? Don't play. Because if you play this game, there's literally no winners, no losers. That's also a really good. There's also a really good sort of analogy for life, right? When the wind is blown away, you want to win, don't play. Nobody wins in this life, right? Everybody ends up in the grave at the end of the day. So it's kind of like saying, is winning really winning in life? Because at the end of the day, whatever you've won, kind of gets cancelled out because you go to the grave. So in his head, saying, what's the point of that? That's kind of where I see that he's trying to say that. If you want to win, don't play. That's his mindset. A terrible mindset to have, but he's saying, what's the point? It's basically like him trying to tell you, what's the point of this anyway, right? Nobody gets out alive. Nobody wins. What's the point of playing this game, right? Which kind of like sort of plays you into that space that he's currently in.
I'm dying, it is something he must handle on his own. The wind blown away when a wind don't play. Today I pulled 3 green frogs that are leaf and bark, where the grapevines climb a convenient barn. I told him you will grow to be something tenacious and exalted. You are mighty, you are gracious, you are lauded. Then I let him go.
So I like the way that he actually plays back into this again and again, where he pulls out these different creatures. And it's like, okay, maybe the first attempt was just because I really didn't like those creatures. Maybe if they were different, maybe if those creatures were different. This is kind of like trying to allude to the fact that maybe if I was different, maybe if I was a different creature, I would maybe be seen differently. So today I pulled 3 green frogs out of a leaf and bark, where the grapevines climbed the convenient bark. Super poetic. I absolutely love that. So grapevines climbed the convenient bark. Also, kind of playing into like, this is a bit less of a messy habitat. So maybe this is something that people can maybe look towards me and be like, okay, he's getting something in order, but yet he's also still trying to tell you that it wasn't by his own doing. It was like by happenstance. By happenstance, things just landed up to fall in its place conveniently. All right, so climb up a convenient bark. This is all just projections of his own life onto these creatures, which I think is fucking unbelievable. Okay, I told them that you will grow up to be something tenacious and exalted. Again, now he's obviously using different terminology, all beautiful terminology, right? You are mighty, you are gracious, you are lauded. Then I let him go again. Okay, so this wasn't good enough for me as well. Okay. I didn't believe in that again, therefore reaffirming once again that he's playing into his insecurities, he's playing into his past. He's becoming very much like his parents, very much like the people he never wanted to be like. Because when you grow up, you sit there and you're like, I'll never do what my parents are. I want to run as far away from who my father is, or as far away from who my mother is, that you actually end up becoming them, right? And then he's trying to play all of this out as if it's some sort of like psychological sort of assessment to try and see what would he be able to hold on to, right? And it seems that once again he let them go.
Something tenacious and exalted. You are mighty, you are gracious, you are lauded. Then I let him go.
So that O is quite telling over there, because it's like, then I let him go, and when he goes, oh, because it almost gives him that pause as well, is actually quite telling, because it gives him that moment to introspect. That's an introspection pause where he literally looks in and he's like, wait a second, fuck. You know what I mean? I did this again. Like maybe I am the very thing that my parents never wanted, because I'm doing the exact thing they did. Even though my life is somewhat kind of taking a little bit of a different turn, conveniently. I don't know. It's my own interpretations. I mean, I'm all over this. This is the first time reacting to this. I'm pretty glad I listened to it for the first time, but it's very hard, even if you listen to it for the first time, very hard to sort of get your mind fully around. This is kind of music that you've got to listen to again and again and again and formulate your thoughts and even write things down.
I have been completely unable to maintain any semblance of relationship on any level. I have been a bastard to the people who have actively attempted to deliver me from peril.
So this over here, this is probably the most telling part of this entire song, because he goes into the actual crux of his introspection, right? He's actually torn the mask off his own face, and he's looking deep within himself, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying. I've been completely unable, and the thing is that he's actually not being in denial of it. He's actually owning it, which is fantastic, because anybody who owns this kind of thing can only move further, can only level up, can only get better. So this is kind of like his therapy, sort of letting go and trying to sort of put his demons out on the table for you to see. And by doing that, he's allowing himself to see them and accept them. I've been completely unable to maintain any semblance of relationship on any level. That is now tied into the animals that he found and then let him go. So on any level, it doesn't matter whether it be with human beings or whether it be with animals that wouldn't take much to care for, right? I can't even maintain a relationship with something as much as a snake, right? I can't have any sort of relationship with nothing, not with animals, not with people, not with life as a whole, right? I've been a bastard to the people who have actively attempted to deliver me from peril. So people that have been trying to assist him, he's actively pushed them away. He's been a bastard to them, right? So not only has he pushed them away, he's actually been an arsehole to them, as if like, I know more, stop intervening, you're an idiot, okay?
I have been acutely undeserving of the ear that listen up and lip that kiss me on the temple. I have been accustomed to a stubborn disposition that admits it which its history
You see, now this is fire, because over here also he says, I have been acutely undeserving of the ear that listen and the listen up and the lip that kiss me on the temple. So here he's kind of referring to his parents, and I like the fact that he's not putting all of his blame on the parents. He's actually owning a lot of that blame, saying, I've been undeserving of that ear. I've been undeserving of that lip that kisses me on the temple. He could be, well, that would be something that's quite motherly. So he could be referring to his mother, which he referred to in the beginning, or somebody that he loves like dearly, like, his girlfriend or whatever else, which again, he can't hold a relationship with, right? But he's accepting the fact that I've been undeserving because I haven't reciprocated in any which way, right? And that's which kind of ties into his last song with the psychology, which was the Shrunk, where he's like, I can understand the push and pull, but he doesn't like the push and pull, right? He doesn't like the give and take, essentially. So he accepts that, and he's like, okay, because I don't engage in this push and pull, because I don't give, I completely understand that I shouldn't get, and I'm completely undeserving of it because I do not give. So why should I receive? Is basically what he's saying. I've been accustomed to a stubborn disposition that admits it wishes its history disassembled. Brilliant writing over here. So he's basically saying that he's been accustomed to this demeanor. He's had this demeanor for so damn long that he's become accustomed to the stubborn disposition that he is. Basically his characteristic as a human being that admits that he is kind of like always obsessing about the history and wishing it was disassembled, wishing he could actually sort of break his entire history down, right? But he can't do that. And by him trying to do that further, it kind of makes him more of an arsehole because of his obsession, because of his sort of stubborn and very clingy disposition to his history that's detrimentally affecting his future, right? Because he's like, I wish I never had this history, but that's not how it works.
Assembled. I have been a hypocrite in sermonizing tolerance while skimming for a ministry to pretzel. I have been unfairly resentful of those I wish had acted different when the bidding was sent.
Fire, man. I've been a hypocrite in sermonizing. So basically, he's putting himself in the position of a priest in a church. So I've been a hypocrite myself. I've been a hypocrite. So how am I supposed to try to exalt good onto somebody else when I myself have not been good? So I've been a complete hypocrite in my own values and beliefs. So I've been a hypocrite in sermonizing tolerance. I haven't actually been able to give a sermon of tolerance to others while skimming for a ministry to pretzel. I myself am skimming for a ministry that I can entangle myself in, being the pretzel, essentially. And because I don't even have that, how fucking dare I, right, being the hypocrite to try and sermonize tolerance when I am not tolerant of others, right? Because I myself need somebody to be tolerant of me, right? Fire. Very cool. I've been unfairly resentful to those I wish had acted different when bidding was essential. So when I most needed someone to do my bidding, I was unfairly resentful towards them. So why would they do my bidding? Right? I think that's what he's trying to say.
I have been unfairly resentful of those I wish had acted different when the bidding was essential. I have been a terrible communicator, prone to isolation over sympathy for devils. I have been my own worst enemy since the very genesis of...
I love that. I've been terrible communicator, prone to the isolation of sympathy for devils. So, jeez, I think it's fucking awesome. Because I've had sympathy, and because I've been dealing with I've been giving too much time, too much valuable time, right? And too much of my sympathy for my demons, my own internal demons. I've been a terrible communicator, right? So he's basically saying, because of my insecurities, right? That's what's been holding me back. That's what's been getting me guarded, which again goes back to shrunk. That's what keeps me guarded, which means that I can't communicate because I have too much sympathy for the insecurities that I possess, for the demons that I possess. I've got too much sympathy for them that I would prefer to not communicate, to sort of protect them, essentially. I've been my own worst enemy since the very genesis of Rebels. Fire, that's very self-explanatory, just referring to the Bible. Since the genesis, obviously the origin of Rebels itself. Since the origin of a rebel, I have been my worst enemy. Meaning I've been my worst enemy since I was born, since my existence.
Deeper devils. I have been my own worst enemy since the very genesis of Rebels. Today I pulled 3 ghost crabs out of rock and sand with a low tide showcase of promised land. I told them you were going to be something dynamic and impressive. You are patient, you are gallant, you are festive. Then I let them go.
Again, so this over here, he plays into that again for the 3rd time. So he's really trying to drive this home. Today I pulled 3 ghost crabs out of rock and sand. Again, rock and sand, when you actually think about sand is just very small rocks, right? Very compacted. So it's kind of trying to say, like, I've built 3 ghost crabs out of rock and sand, between a rock and a hard place, essentially. So he kind of felt like maybe I was saving them. Where the low tide showcased the promised land. So obviously when the tide goes low and the crabs come out onto the sand, they can actually see the land. And it's like they've got so much to work with. It looks like a promised land. This is where our habitat lies. But then you get the predators like him, where he says, I pulled 3 ghost crabs out of their own habitat where they were comfortable. I pulled them out of that. Again, alluding to himself being pulled out of his own habitat as well, that made him comfortable, like his parents' house, and where people loved him, where the low tide showcased the promised land, right? And when he says where the low tide showed a promised land is where taking it back to his childhood, which is very fucking clever to write the way he wrote there, because it's kind of like taking back to his childhood where he had no responsibilities and had no sort of like all of these bills and all of these things that an adult deals with, right? That's where I was comfortable, right? There was a promised land ahead of me because I didn't have any trials and tribulations. I didn't need to deal with the responsibilities because somebody else had it. It was always low tide for me. Is basically I never felt like I was drowning, but the moment I started being an adult, right, the tide rose and I was unable to see the promised land. So that's a really good projection onto the actual crabs and the low tide over here. Very, very, very cool. I told them you will grow to be something dynamic and impressive. Again, trying to do that affirming, those beautiful words, trying to be that affirming. You are patient, you are gallant, you are festive. It's almost like he's trying to use those words to sort of affirm himself, but then he let them go. And it's almost like by him letting the actual crabs go, it's him letting those words go. It's kind of like him explaining to himself that I'm not any of that. So it's almost like he's projecting those words onto something else. And it's actually quite important from a psychological perspective. When you go to sort of like different sort of psychological therapy and classes and things like that, where you work on yourself, and even in a lot of self-help books, they often talk to you about actually taking beautiful words and then sort of parting with beautiful words on something that you can visualize, right? So actually giving something else meaning. So it doesn't even matter what it is, even if it happens to be a piece of paper, putting those words on that piece of paper is very important, because that's kind of like bringing to life what you feel of yourself, right? And that's something that you can hold on to from a psychological perspective, right? It tends to sort of affirm and validate your life and who you are. So he's kind of saying, okay, so I'm doing that. So I took these crabs out, something that I'll try to find meaning in. I put these words on there, right? And because I put these words on there, it should make this beautiful, which should make me want to hold on to it, to keep the memory of who I am, the projection of me, alive, right? But then I let them go. So I keep letting anything that I deem beautiful, impressive, tenacious, dynamic, whatever it is, anything that I deem that, I let go, right? Which means I let myself go, right? Okay.
Something dynamic and impressive. You are patient, you are gallant, you are festive. Then I let him go.
Again. I love this part, on and 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 on. So it's that repetition, repetitiveness, right? Repetitiveness, on and on and on and round the Ferris wheel we go, right? Never-ending story, this infinite loop of the same exact thing, the same mentality, the same insecurities, the same hardships, the same demeanor, the same stubbornness, the same everything, on and on and on and on and on. There's no off-ramp for me here. I'm in a never-ending lane that I cannot get out of, right? Carrying this heavy load. And the dangerous part about it is that this heavy load that I'm carrying and the lane that I'm traveling on is the suicide road, where he might be giving you a slight introspection into like those suicidal thoughts of how far does this road go until we reach Suicide Valley or Suicide City, where when I reach that destination, then what? Terrifying to think of that. Fucking hell. This has been a 45-minute reaction. Good Lord. Sorry, I know it's long, but we went verse for verse, line for line, and I tried to give you my introspective, even though completely and utterly unpackaged. Packaged decently. My views and thoughts on this and my introspections on this was completely all over the show, right? But you need to listen to in order to sort of like grapple with this better, you do need to listen to it and sort of like write things down and mull on it over a little bit, look for the deeper meaning, look for the different layers, and sort of, every time you listen to this, you'll pick out something different, essentially. So yes, I might have felt like I was a little bit all over the show over here. I hope to God, I most certainly I wasn't concise about it, but I most certainly hope that I was at least somewhat coherent in what I was doing, trying to explain the song. This is quite possibly the most hectic one we've done of his to date, but absolutely brilliant. This is going to be stuck in my head for a while now, because now I need to sort of introspect on this a lot more. There's so much in there that I don't think I got anywhere near. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think down below, man. I apologize this is long. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all. Please stay safe, yourself. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.